adding a bill item into a quotation. So if we continue one of our current quotations, and then from our summary screen, if we click Bill Schedule of Works, then takes us to the screen where we're adding all our bill items. So to add a new bill item, we click Create New Bill Item for Quotation. Takes the next quotation, the quotation number and the sequential number, and then we type in our description that the client is going to see. So to supply and install fitting. And if we make a spelling error, we can just right click on it and then select the correct spelling. Then to save typing the rest, I'm just going to paste the remainder of the description in. We then need to say the unit measure. We can batch price things. So we can say this is based on a batch of 1, but if we were saying making 5 or 6 items, we could say that it was 5 and then our materials would be for 5, but then at the end the system would divide it by the batch to equal a unit price. But we're going to leave that as 1. We then have an area where we can type our own notes that are not seen by the client. So it might be just any reminders, just how we've priced it, or any guesses or judgments that we've made. So now I need to formulate the price for the item by using a combination of these areas. So we've got sheet materials, cubic timbers, ironmongery glass, bought-in labour, components. So we can bring in already built components, which we'll look at in a moment. If we've got a subcontract element on it, we can add that in, provisional sums, adjustments, etc. So to add a sheet material, we click sheet materials, and then we get a new line by pressing the Control-A key combination. And then we need to type in the material code. Now, we don't know how things are being coded, but we guess an MDF is going to begin with MDF. So I put MDF and then put the @ symbol and then hit the tab key. And that will force the system to load anything that begins with MDF from the material library. And I can then select the materials that we want. So if I just want an 84 sheet, that's 18 mil, I highlight it and say use selected item. Puts description in. Now you can see that it's defaulted by putting the overall the sheet size in there. But if I wanted to do cut pieces, there's nothing to stop me from saying top panel, and then we say the length is 1.2, the width is 0.55, and I want 1. And the suggested wastages come at 15. I could change that if I wanted to for this particular item. Then it works out the square meterage times the estimating rate. So put a new line, so Control-A to get a new line. Now this time I can put MDF 18 at, so I only get the 18 mil boards showing. So I'll pick the 84 sheet again. And this time we can just say total sheets if we prefer to price it that way. Leave the sheet size in and say we want 5 sheets. But obviously, because I've already catered for the wastage by doing sheets, I need to take the suggested wastage off. Similarly, if I want some other materials, I put MDF, let's say we want 6 mil, simply select that. On the sheet, let's say we want some laminate, so I can put lam at, and then we'll have some summer oak. Sheets, we'll leave the sheet size in, and let's have 3 sheets of that. So we just build up our sheet materials in there, and you can also see that as you're entering materials, they are building up in this table to the top right. So if we want some mouldings to that, we could go to cubic timbers, get a new line, Control-A. Don't know what the code is, but we know we want some oak, so I could put at oak at. So I'm asking the system to search for any materials in the hardwood library or the cubic timber library that's got the word oak in it. So I hit the tab key and that brings up my selection. So I can select the American oak, and here we could say it's the front lippings. Width, let's say it's going to be out of, I don't know, 50 by 25. The length will have 1.2, but let's say we've got 5 of those. The suggested waste in the material library is 40%. I might think, well, there's going to be a bit more wastage on that. I'm going to up that to 60%. So add to mine. You can see that's now added to this table up here. So although we've got our sheet materials on this screen and our cubic timbers on this screen, we can see everything collated as we're going along in this panel up here. So let's have some ironmongery. Let's search for some draw runners. Spell it correctly. Some runners there. Now the system will also tell you if the cost hasn't been updated for X amount of days, and that can be set in your system settings. So this is telling me this is a pretty old price. So I could check that price. At the moment it's $12.77. If I just highlight that and say amend selected library item, I could then see where we buy it from and the estimated cost. So there hasn't been a supplier put in here, but it might be that we're buying it from I don't know who we've got in here. Let's have a look. No. Let's just add Travis Perkins in. Obviously, we put the full address in there. Let's say it's Birkenhead, and we'll say they're a supplier. Obviously, we put their phone number in. All details, any contact details, which I'm not going to do now because that's covered in another training video. And then I can put in the cost that they've given to us. So they might say they're at now $15.75, but I might think, well, I'm not too sure where we are going to buy them from. We might buy them somewhere else. So I'm going to put them in at $16.50 that I know I'm covered for estimating purposes. And now you can see that it's increased that to $16.50. Now, if I was to remove that out of here and bring it back in, I'm just going to copy the code to save me searching for it. You'll see I'm no longer alerted that the price is old because it's now been updated to the correct price. So we'll have 2 of those. If I've got, say, a selection of miscellaneous fittings and I just don't fixings and I don't really want to pull them off piece by piece, you can set up a fixings library item where I can just bring in fixings general and say that we just want to put £10 worth in. So basically it's a unit cost of 1 times 10 gives me £10. The reason why we do that is when we do a material analysis, it will collate the quantity times the unit cost. So we get an accurate figure on just the fixing, the general fixings that I've allowed for. And then I'm going to put some labor in. So we can use a labor template if we set them up. So I can then just pick, we want some general labor, some CNC, bench, some polishing and site fixing. So we then select. We've got an area that we could put details in if we want to. We could say that's general fitting. Don't have to, I can leave it blank. Any setup time and then hours and minutes and number of men. So machine time, let's say we'll have 3 hours machining. CNC, let's say it's going to be 30 minutes setting up, but it'll only be running for 20 minutes. Bench joiner, we'll put 16 hours in. Spray polishing, let's add 6. Site fixer, most of the work's going to be done in the workshop, but it's still got to be carried into position on site and maybe some parts assembled. So we might say we've got 1 hour for 2 men to do that on site. So now we're gradually building up this item. Now you can see in the description, we also need a 3-drawer pedestal unit in there. So rather than pricing that up from scratch, I could bring in a pre-priced unit So if I was to search the component library for anything with the word pedestal in it, you can see here we've got a 3-drawer pedestal on casters, and it's 430 by 670 by 600. Now I think, well, is that what I want? I can just double click on that and I can then view how that's been priced. So I can see that it's 3-drawer pedestal, and we've also put here required finish to be applied at bill level. So we can see that there's been no laminate finish or no spray finish to the item. It's basically in the raw. And also it's had a suggested setting out time of 3 hours booked to that. So before I bring that in, I just want to show you the material and labor analysis for this item without that. So if I show material analysis, you can see we've got our materials there, and we look at the labor analysis. Now, if I go back to this item and bring that pedestal unit in, we bring one in. Now, if I look at my material analysis, you can see the materials now have been added to that original item. Similarly, if I look at the labor analysis, the labor's been added to as well. So that saves having to price this unit from scratch. We can just bring in items that we've pre-priced. Now, if you remember, we need to add finishes to that. So I could go back to my sheet materials and then just type in lamb, bring in some summer oak. And then we could say this is the drawer fronts. Let's say we just want one sheet of that. And let's say we need additional labor for that as well. So I could just increase the labor items here, or if I want to see it separated out, I could just add in, again, machine labor general, and we could say this is the drawer fronts. And let's say we've got 15 minutes to do that. And then we have some bench labor. And that's say me typing that. We can copy text. I can just Control-C and then Control-V. So it's standard PC copy paste functions. And let's say we'll over-egg that. We'll put 90, or not 90 hours, put 90 minutes in for that. So we've now added to that. So I can then go back to my item summary, so I can see all the elements added into there. Now you can see from our component that we brought in, the pedestal unit, that had 3 suggested setting out hours in. Now that's carried forward into that. And then I could say, well, I want a further, say, 4 hours for setting this item out. So I've got 7 suggested setting out hours for this unit because I haven't costed them in my labor. Again, some people do cost the setting out in each item, some put the setting out into prelims. It's entirely up to yourselves. This way I know that I've got 7 hours to attribute to somewhere. So I can then complete the item. I'm not going to print it out. I want one of them. And then it pops it into the quotation. I then just need to position it in the correct place. So I want it to appear as number 4 under fittings. So I will just copy that bill page header. I will paste it into there. And what number we're saying, it's number 4. So I just put 04. Now, if I refresh this screen by clicking the build schedule of works, you'll see that drops that into that area. If I needed something to appear in between, I could just say that's item 03, let's say 025, and then refresh. And you can see that will position it in between item 2 and 3. If I wanted to view that, I can just double click on it. I can then view the full details. So I can see how I've priced it. If I think, crikey, I've missed something out, all I need to do is double click on it. And rather than saying view, I go to unlock and amend item. I can then go and change anything. So I might say, actually, I want to add a little extra bench joiner into the overall item. I can just up that to 20 hours and then complete. And then that's back into the bill item at a slightly higher price. And that's all there is to adding a bill item.